Representatives, I'll call the House to order. This morning, the prayer and the pledge will be led by guests of Representative Mark Roberts. The prayer will be offered by Mayor Kirk Hunsaker from Santaquin, and the pledge will be led by Representative Roberts' children, Tate and Ellie Roberts, and they are joined by three cousins, Kaya, Jason, and Kalel. I invite everyone in the chamber as well as the gallery to please stand for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful this day to be able to meet in this setting and to be able to make a difference in this world. We're grateful, Father, for these good men and good women who give of their time and their talents to benefit us citizens of this great state of Utah. We're grateful for Thy Spirit, and we pray that it be here in attendance this day. And we are again thankful for all of our blessings, and we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please repeat the pledge after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Representative, please mark the roll. I'll declare that we have a quorum present. Representative Chavez-Haug.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Personal privilege?
Personal privilege granted.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, this morning and today we are celebrating Museum Advocacy Day on the Hill. And I would like to recognize the Utah Museum Association and the 30-plus museums who are represented here today for Utah Museum Advocacy Day. We've got museums from throughout the state that represent us and that many of you may be very familiar with because they may be in your communities. I know that some 20 years ago when I was working for the Utah Museum of Natural History, I had the great opportunity of interfacing with colleagues from the various museum communities. They share information about our history, about our community, and about the cultures with which we interface. Utah is home to more than 250 museums. And we wanted to make note that with us today, though, these constituent representatives from your various museums will be in the rotunda until about 2 p.m. We definitely invite you to make sure that you connect with them. We've got J.C. Craven Walker, President, Sonia Lunda, Vice President, Carrie Snow, Treasurer, and Kaya London, Secretary for the Museums Association. So let's welcome to the Capitol today.
Representative Lifforth.
Madam Speaker, point of personal privilege.
Personal privilege granted.
Good morning. This morning we have 60 students from Frontier Middle School, which is a brand new middle school in Eagle Mountain, and they're here in the gallery, so if you could join with me in welcoming them with a round of applause. Thank you.
Representative Last.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Personal privilege.
Personal privilege granted.
Today in the gallery with me I have a new friend. His name is Tom Tam. Tom Tam was born in the slums of Hong Kong, and his parents came to Washington, D.C. and spent their lives working in Chinese kitchens. And Tom was able to go to school, became an accountant, became a executive with accounting companies and in the insurance industry, and has recently moved to St. George, and I've had the good pleasure of meeting him. He's somebody, obviously, who's been able to live the American dream. Please welcome Tom Tam to the Capitol today.
Representative Webb.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Personal privilege.
Personal privilege granted.
Thank you. Representative Mathis and I share an intern, Libby Giles. Last Wednesday, Libby's grandfather passed away, John B. Jack Giles. Libby was very close to her grandfather, and we'd like to extend our sympathy to the family and acknowledge her grandfather's passing. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Webb. Madam Reading Clerk, for introduction of bills.
House Bill 162, Asset Protection Trust Amendments, Representative Tanner. House Bill 163, Appellate Bond Amendments, Representative Sagers. House Bill 164, Interstate Compact on Transfer of Public Lands, Representative Stratton. House Bill 397, Student and Family Privacy Amendments, Representative Layton. House Bill 398, Planning Districts Amendments, Representative King. House Bill 399, Truancy Amendments, Representative Gibson, and HGR 22, Joint Resolution amending Civil Procedure Rule 62, Representative Sagers.
Thank you, Madam Reading Clerk. These bills have been read for the first time and are referred to the Rules Committee. Representatives, we don't have any items on the consent calendar today, so I guess you're ready. We'll move to the concurrence calendar. Representative Draxler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First substitute House Bill 40.
Motion to concur?
Yes.
Got to have the motion first.
But it wasn't read.
It's been read 3 times.
Thank you.
So we don't have to read it. So
I would make a motion that we concur with the Senate amendments to House Bill 40.
Okay. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Please. The Senate substituted the bill to remove any earmarks, mandates, or percentages that were in the bill regarding specific amounts that should be spent on the prevention of underage drinking and binge drinking. The bill now simply expresses the intent of the legislature that a balanced approach be taken by local entities when utilizing their beer tax revenue, and that an emphasis be placed on prevention.
Thank you. Is there discussion to the motion to concur? Seeing none, would you like to sum?
I'll waive summation.
Summation is waived. The motion is to concur with the Senate amendments to House Bill 40. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Well, the motion passes. The House concurs with the Senate amendments. Voting is open for final passage of first substitute House Bill 40. Representative Grover. It appears that all present have voted. Voting will be closed. First substitute, House Bill 40, having received 66 yes votes, 1 no vote, passes the House, will be returned to the Senate for the signature of the President. Representative Val Peterson.
Motion to concur with the Senate substitute.
Thank you. The motion is to concur with the Senate amendments on House Bill 219, Veterans Separation Amendments. Would you like to speak to the motion?
I would. Thank you, Madam Chair. So what this did was it reserved 3 areas that were in the bill to make them reserved for only honorable discharge. So there was a section that you could become a firefighter by taking the firefighter exam and receive preference for that. You would only be able to do that if you had an honorable discharge. That you could get an honorary high school diploma, that you could only get that if you had an honorable discharge, and that you could only receive veterans preference if you had an honorable discharge. So the other sections would remain as general discharge and honorable discharge, but those 3 sections would be reserved for those with an honorable discharge. And that concludes my presentation, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Is there discussion to the motion to concur? Seeing none, back to you for summation.
Waive.
Summation is waived. The motion is to concur with the Senate amendments on first substitute House Bill 219. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Well, the motion passes. The House concurs with the Senate amendments. Voting is open for final passage of first substitute House Bill 219. So I can see it. Representative Cunningham? Appears that all present have voted. Voting will be closed. First substitute, House Bill 219, having received 69 yes votes, 0 no votes, passes the House and will be returned to the Senate for the signature of the President. Personal privilege. Representatives, we're going to move to the House third reading calendar. Representative Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Motion to encircle House Bill 103.
Thank you. The motion is to encircle House Bill 103, State Money Management Act amendments. Is there discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Well, the motion passes. The bill is encircled and properly before us. Representative Cunningham to the bill.
We have a motion that needs to be, or an amendment that needs to be made by Representative Hutchings, but I see just walked out of the floor. See, here he is.
Representative Cunningham, do you have a presentation on the bill?
I do, yes.
Do you want to make that presentation? And then
Yes.
we'll go to the amendment.
The current State Money Management Act does not require the state treasurer, when giving an annual report on the returns in the funds, all he needs to do is report the 1, 3, and 5 years. What we're doing here is some accountability and putting in benchmarks so we know whether we're underperforming, overperforming, or status quo based on how monies are being managed. That's the bill.
Thank you, Representative. Is there discussion to the bill? Representative Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move amendment number 2 in my name.
I have that. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's a little bit of a clarification. We wanted to go through and make a couple of minor adjustments. Talks about protection of principal during periods of financial market volatility we wanted that to be specifically stated, and then we had to do some renumbering, and so we put it into an amendment, and it's amendment number 2.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Cunningham to the amendment.
I'll waive.
Is there further discussion of the motion to amend? Seeing none, Representative Hutchings, would you like to sum?
Waive summation, thank you.
Summation is waived. The motion to amend is amendment number 2, dated February 14th at 12:02 p.m. All in favor of the motion to amend, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Rule the motion passes. The bill is amended. Is there further discussion to the bill? Seeing none, Representative Cunningham for summation.
I'll waive.
Summation is waived. Voting is open on House Bill 103. Appears that all present have voted. Voting will be closed. House Bill 103, having received 73 yes votes, 0 no votes, passes the House, will be transmitted to the Senate for its consideration. Representative Cunningham.
Motion to encircle House Bill 221, Madam Speaker.
Motion is to encircle House Bill 221, School Community Council revisions. Is there discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Rule the motion passes. The bill is encircled and properly before us. Representative Cunningham to the bill.
Thank you. First of all, I need to thank the great representative from northern Cache County area on the great work that he has done with the community council bills over the last many years. As I sat in a committee this last year, we felt that we needed to strengthen the training program specifically regarding school community councils. As we know, with the current fund, it's right near $1.8 billion. We had $40 million in revenue that was distributed out to the schools through the state of Utah. And as this fund continues to grow, we wanted to make sure that we're ensuring the steps to make sure that the water gets to the end of the row with all of our schools. We found some inconsistencies with training getting to some of the community councils. We have some great school districts that have done a great job with the community counseling, and they sat in and helped with the counseling on making sure that we could get this done. So a technical change just for a deadline date. We have changed a date to have the training and that done by October 20th. When we look at it, it requires school districts to record the amount of school trust land program funds distributed to each school on the School Trust Land Program website by October. It requires the president and chair of the local school board and charters, schools governing board, to ensure that the members of their representative boards provided with annual training on this. And really, as we look through the bill, very simple. As you get back into lines 365, it talks about the dates that we have in there, 389 to 399, that really is specifying the training and who is doing that training. And then as you look at the back of the bill, lines 454 on, gets into the section that provides the training and who's responsible for. Through the Utah Office of Education, we have got some great trainers, great people and staff that have done that. Margaret Round, that was with us for many years, had done this, but this is getting into the specific that once we can help assist and do training around the state of Utah, that then we're going to rely on the school districts, the charter schools, and the school boards to make sure that our community councils are properly trained. One of the inconsistencies that we had were some principals through the state that were really dictating where the monies should have been going, and as we know, it's the chair and the elected board there in our community councils would be responsible for that. So with that, I will end with my presentation.
Thank you, Representative. Is there discussion to House Bill 221? Representative Sagers?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will disclosure yield to a question?
Representative Cunningham, go ahead.
If I remember correctly, this bill grants the community councils more authority to expend money. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Are they elected?
Yes.
By whom?
The parents or guardians inside the school.
But not through a formal vote of the public. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I find that disconcerting insofar as I feel that elected officials are more accountable than a group of people that may volunteer to run for office or may be asked to run for office with no direct vote of the public. And I admire the idea, but I will be voting against it. Thank you.
Seeing no further lights, Representative Cunningham for summation on the bill.
I'll waive.
Summation is waived. Voting is open on House Bill 221. Representative Ivory. Appears that all present have voted. Voting will be closed. House Bill 221, having received 63 yes votes, 5 no votes, passes the House, will be transmitted to the Senate for its consideration. Representative Barris.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to request a personal privilege.
Personal privilege granted.
I'd like to acknowledge the presence today of 2 of our 5th grade classes from J.A. Taylor Elementary in Centerville. They're just up here standing and waving at us, and I'd like to acknowledge them and give them a hand. Their teachers are here with them, Heidi Holmes and Laura Eliason. Thank you for being here. If we can give them a hand. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Madam Reading Clerk.
First substitute, House Bill 302, Voting Records Amendments, Representative Edwards. This bill was heard in Government Operations with a vote of 7, 1, and 1.
Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So back in 2011 and 2012, I began to work with a group of constituents on this issue of protecting an individual's information that's included on their voter registration record. During those years. We had several discussions in committee, obviously, and there were times when the comment was made when I brought up the possibility of abuse of this information, quote, "It'll never happen. We'll never have that happen. No one would ever buy that and use that information nefariously." Well, in January of 2014, for $1,050, the entire Utah voter database, including 1.5 million people, was published online at a cost of 1/10 of 1 cent per voter. I have in my possession here a copy of each one of you on the floor, the voter registration information for you, just pulled off that, and 74 copies right here. I declined to pass that out over my concern with your personal information, which you may look at and then possibly throw in the garbage, and without any idea of how that would be, taken care of. My concern is for your privacy, but I want you to know that, for instance, I can tell who was born in this body on the 3rd of February in 1956. I can see who was born on the 26th of May, 1971, 9th of October, 1986, who has 7 registered voters in their family, who lives at 111 West, 5600 South, etc. Your voter ID information, your birth date, the date you first were registered in the state of Utah, your party affiliation, every single time you have voted, and your address, all on here for you and every person who lives in your household. When this information got out and I started to hear from constituents over this, first of all, 2 main things. Number one, they were surprised, they were concerned, and then they were angry. They were angry because they felt like the government that they feel like ought to be in a position to protect them has actually sold them. Many became unregistered as voters because they didn't want their information out there. In fact, 1 of 4 eligible non-voters said the reason they're not registered to vote is because they want to keep their personal information private. Why does this matter? I mean, for us, maybe it's not a big deal, but for many, it's a big concern. Identity theft numbers are staggering. I've heard on many occasions from our Davis County attorney of the pervasive problem that we have in our state with people being targeted. With this information out there, those numbers continue to grow and the vulnerable population grows. In addition, elder abuse and victimization that's targeted to that population. Domestic violence victims. We heard a moving testimony during our committee hearing from a woman who had been a victim of abuse and had testified at a trial. The person who she had testified against had been incarcerated and was being released, and she was concerned that this individual would be able to track her down through her voter information record. And she's right. She ought to be concerned. The government should not require an individual to relinquish their right of privacy in order to exercise their right to vote. So how does the bill solve this problem? In a couple of ways. Number one, it adds the date of birth to the list of records that are classified as private. If you're pulling up the bill, it's on line 469, where it adds that to the list of other things like, let me just see, your driver's license number, your social security number, and adds it to that. And then secondly, it contains a provision for individuals to opt in to classify their voter registration information as private. And it does that in 4 different places in the bill. When you first register to vote, if you register when you become fill out your driver's license, when you have a change of residence, and also a provisional ballot. So there has been concern in the past about the balance between the public's right to information and a citizen's right to privacy. I think this bill actually hits the right balance because it allows people to make the determination on their own if they'd like to protect that record for themselves. It also allows everyone to be insured that their private date of birth will be automatically protected. And I think it's simple. This is something that people are asking for, and it does no harm to our commitment towards fair elections and the ability for the Lieutenant Governor's office to do their job. In fact, they're supportive of this effort, and I believe strongly that an individual should not have to trade in their constitutional right to vote in order to ensure their right to privacy. And that concludes my presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Is there discussion to first substitute House Bill 302? Representative Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd just like to rise and strongly support the sponsors of this piece of legislation. I think it's interesting how sometimes we have to get kicked in the teeth to do the right thing. Any of you who have followed this topic for a while will recognize that to some degree. I myself sponsored a similar bill about 6 or 7 years ago, only to be dragged out these center doors right here and pretty much get lashed around by our own political parties saying, "What are you doing? You are interrupting the process. We have to have this vital information." Well, I think it's interesting that we've gotten to a point now in the state of Utah and in the nation where people are recognizing that government's reckless use of their personal information is getting a little out of hand. I've had the opportunity to experience it firsthand. There is another Eric Hutchings living in Dallas, Texas. Stole my identity about 18 months ago. Took my tax returns this last year, has racked up about $80,000 worth of all kinds of credit and stuff like that. I am just crazy frustrated that we could have prevented this. We could have solved this. We have the power to protect people. And when we sit around and we're debating all kinds of ways to change the electoral process because people don't want to participate, well, I'll point to one great big giant one right here. People don't want to participate because we asked them to put everything on that voter identity sheet that we know we're going to sell off to the public that can be used absolutely to steal their identities. I've had it. I've experienced it. I'm still dealing with it. I had to go through and do all kinds of stuff this last year to try and explain. I had over 800 credit 2 years ago. I'm now just below 600. And we take this information, representatives, we have got to learn to protect the confidence of the people who deal with us on a daily basis. We had a breach in the health department. People got fired over it. It was horrible, awful. Well, we do it with voter records. And we refused to protect them years ago when we could have. This is late coming. It is absolutely the right thing. It was the right thing we should have done years ago. And we have to put a lot more focus and emphasis on protecting people's confidence in us to protect them against the nefarious people that are out there on the planet. And is it a bit of an inconvenience? Yes. But I'm telling you, again, with all of the debate we're going to have about how do we get people out to vote, let's completely change the process for how we do this, when it may be just as simple that when you really get down to the numbers, people just don't want everybody on planet Earth knowing everything about them just so that they can have the right to vote. So, obviously, pretty passionate about it. It's the right thing to do. We should have done it a long time ago. But as other bills come up, please be sensitive to the fact that when we put information out there that allows someone to steal your identity, like mine has been stolen, and I'm not saying it was off of this list. I don't know how they found it, but they had everything. My birthday, my social security, my address, my cell phone number. They had everything. We have to protect the people and keep the confidence in the people that the government is not going to put them in a vulnerable position. So on this bill, please support this bill. And on other bills, as you're working on stuff related to it, please be sensitive to the fact that people do, in fact, get hurt when we don't properly protect their personal identification. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Perry?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also stand in support of this and want to clarify. The reason my name is up there on the board for this is because I originally been working with the good representative from Davis County. I originally filed a bill on this when I got reached out by a constituent that brought my attention to this UtahVoters.com website and was concerned about her public information being out there and available for everybody. And I do want to let you know that we have done some good things as a legislature. We've removed the Social Security number from there that was there before. We did that step. Interestingly enough, we didn't take the date of birth off, but we excluded that they can't have their email addresses. Now, I can have 15 different email addresses, and those are all over the place. I only have one date of birth, and that concerns me that we haven't gone down that road as well. And the real concerning issue to this whole point, why I brought this bill forward, and then I've given it to the good representative from Davis County because, as the good representative from Western Salt Lake County just pointed out, as well as the representative from Davis County, this is not just a one-time issue. This has not just come up once. It's been brought up time and time again. And the good representative from Davis County has worked very hard on this bill and on this issue for a number of years. And so as this bill came forward, I realized I had a bill going forward. It was a little bit further ahead than hers. I felt like this was a good opportunity to have one bill, consolidate. We don't need all those bills out here. So the two of us worked together, we've merged it, and we've signed it over into her name at this point, and I've signed on as a co-sponsor. But I do strongly believe in this, and we did some research. If you get on Twitter and you go in there and you type in Utah voter privacy, you'll see some really interesting comments from the public out there about the fact that we don't have good Utah voter privacy. And then the interesting thing for me was not only did we find out that this individual had purchased this list and put it out for the whole public purview, and suddenly we had a huge problem, but then the media got a hold of it. And of course, you've all been contacted by constituents, I'm sure, at this point, and you probably, if it wouldn't take very long, with a little Google search, you could pull up all kinds of media stories on this issue. And interestingly enough, just a couple weeks ago, there was a story run by the media about how to avoid having too much personal information online. As you look at that story and then you look at the comments made by people, that is why this bill is so important. Because the comments made by people at the end of that report were things like, this story is useless information as when the state of Utah is going to sell our personal information to be posted on the internet. The best advice is not to register to vote in Utah. That's not the message we want to send to the registered voters, the people out there. Another one says, I totally agree. He says, I'm not registered to vote in Utah, and I never will be until I can be sure that my information is private and safe. And then the last comment I'll end on here is it said, our legislature is in session. How about asking our legislators to prohibit government entities from releasing our personal information without a court order? That's just one of the many comments we're getting from the people out there. I think as representatives of the people, we owe it to the people that put us here to protect their information, and I would ask for your support on this bill.
Representative Draxler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the sponsor yield to a question?
Representative Edwards, will you yield?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Representative, could you address how this bill interfaces with another bill making its way through the legislature, which is Senate Bill 36, and whether those two are compatible and how they can work together?
Absolutely. So Senate Bill 36, I think, has passed out of the House committee. And is probably, we're going to be hearing that at some point. And it allows for the use of the voter information by a certain group, and I'll list those individuals here in a second. And it also attributes a penalty associated with misuse or inappropriate use. So the entities that are allowed use within Senate Bill 36 to have this information, your voter information, are government officials, journalistic, political, scholarly, which are all mimicking a California law that has been in place for, I think, since 2004. And then it goes beyond that and includes healthcare providers, insurance companies or their representatives, and also financial institutions as well. So all of those entities would have access to this voter record. So could these two coincide? Absolutely, because that bill basically allows those groups to have access to the information. 302 says the voter date of birth remains as a private record, so that could continue. And it also says that a voter could have the capacity to opt out of having it be public. So they could, but I really think that it's important to have the safeguards that are in 302 because there's just a lot in Senate Bill 36, a lot of access to that information that I think most people are not comfortable with.
May I follow up, Madam Speaker? I would urge the body to pay close attention to these two bills. This bill in question today, House Bill 302, must pass in order for us to ever consider Senate Bill 136. Excuse me, Senate Bill 36. There are loopholes in the Senate bill. We heard the bill in government operations yesterday, and while it does some good things, it also leaves open some very significant loopholes that this bill we're discussing right now will close, at least partially. If we think voter privacy is significant, we need to not only pass this bill today, but I believe we should wait till it passes the Senate before we pass Senate Bill 36. So I urge your support, colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Anderegg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to reserve the right to make a motion.
If that's a motion to amend, you can reserve that right.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Would the sponsor yield to a question?
Representative Edwards, will you yield?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So is the bill, as I've just been reviewing it now for the third or fourth time, really primarily protecting just the date of birth or all of the information, meaning that person voted in this election and that election? Is that information also going to be protected and made not available?
The bill does two things. It automatically provides that the date of birth is classified as a private record, similar to your driver's license or social security number.
So it would be removed.
It's removed.
Good.
And then the second piece is that it says to every single person who's registering to vote, do you want this information to be public or not? It's an opt-in to making it private. So the assumption is that it is public information, and there will be verbiage that is in the bill on those lines that I referenced that says, do you want this information to be public? If they check no, then that entire record is off.
Including all of their history?
Yes.
Okay. I am actually very much in support of this bill with that point of clarification. I believed if it was a blanket that the records were gone unless you opted to allow them to be was what my concern was, quite frankly. If it's, hey, I don't want this information to be out there, period. My concern was that obviously each of us have to run an election. Each of us, I shouldn't say each of us, some of us may be independently wealthy. I am not. And from that standpoint, I didn't have time or money to go and convert people to believe in Jake Anderegg. I just didn't have the time, the resources, the money. I just couldn't do it. So the information was valuable to me, not necessarily their date of birth. In fact, even though it's been on there, I've never even looked at it. What was valuable to me was knowing that that person voted in X, Y, and Z elections. The information, just so the public is aware, doesn't say how they voted, just that they voted. And with that information, I was able to go through and kind of create my target list of who I needed to talk to, that low-hanging fruit. Because I didn't have the money to go and convert people to vote. I had to go and get the people who were already going to vote. And from that standpoint, the information is very valuable to our existing political process. However, the information needs to be safeguarded. From that standpoint, I absolutely support this bill and thank the sponsor, along with including the opt-in provision, which makes that information private. I think this is a great bill, and we should strongly support it and pass it out. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I withdraw my motion.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Chavez-Hauk.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the sponsor yield to a question?
Representative Edwards, will you yield?
Yes.
Go ahead.
My question relates similarly to questioning that was just presented by the good representative from Utah County. And it relates more to looking at the voter files as a whole, the record as a whole, and being able to establish, for example, if there are cases of voter fraud. And I'm wondering if excluding the birth date from those records in any way compromises the record as a whole in terms of being able to validate which voters are whom.
My understanding is we have raised this issue and discussed it at length with the Lieutenant Governor's Office, for whom that is one of their main tasks, is to ensure the veracity of elections, is that they can accomplish that same goal of ensuring that there is not voter fraud using other mechanisms, including the voter ID number.
Thank you. And I'm also curious as to, I appreciate your concern with the issue of birth date, but I'm wondering why within the context of the bill we didn't address issues related to access to that internet list, i.e. the penalties that are present in SB 36.
That's just something that we have not addressed, is the penalties associated with that, because we have felt like if there is a very clearly delineated usage here, then, especially as it relates to the voter birth date, that will not have an ability to get out because it will be protected. And in terms of the existing website that has published that entire database, there are already county attorneys who have stated their willingness to look at this issue in terms of exploring how to force through legal avenues the removal of that list and to prosecute under the proposed statute, HB 302, what would be considered an inappropriate use of that, publishing that.
All right, thank you. An additional question, if I might, Madam Speaker. So a couple of individuals have gotten on this floor and have expressed grave concern regarding use of voter information to commit fraud. And even notably, our good colleague from Kearns noted that he had been recently a victim of voter fraud, but didn't really know what that could be attributed to. Do we have data that is able to correlate the use of voter files to voter fraud, and what might that look like?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
I'm sorry. I guess what I'm trying to ascertain is, do we have a direct correlation between access to voter files and fraud that is of concern to this body and our constituents?
You know, I think that it's difficult to thread that backwards and find out exactly where the information has been leaked from. But I can tell you that for many individuals, they like to look at this from the opposite direction and say, can you prove that it is not being used in that way? Can we prove that this information is not being used to target vulnerable populations such as domestic violence victims and elderly? Can we prove that it is not being inappropriately used for commercial purposes? And I think in many cases, especially the commercial purposes, we can connect those dots very easily. And with the others, the release of the data that has come from the state of Utah in many cases, or the Target release of data, can we prove exactly where that came from? Well, I think in this case, the answer is, unless we can prove that we as a state can accurately and convincingly protect this information for our voters, then I think we need to act on this issue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I appreciate the concern that all of our constituents have expressed to us upon the recent findings in the media reports related to the abuse of this website and relaying our constituents' information, and do compliment the sponsor for her efforts in trying to tackle this challenge of voter fraud. Notably, I did support the bill in committee. Having heard, though, SB 36 in committee also, I would disagree with my colleague from Northern Utah related to the need that we have to have both of these bills in place. I believe that the other bill that we will have an opportunity to hear addresses what I believe is the main challenge, which is what happens to this information and how does the government sell this outright? How do other individuals access this information? And would caution moving forward in supporting this bill. Thank you.
Representative Notwell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the sponsor yield to a question?
Representative Edwards, will you yield?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Representative, first let me just compliment you on tackling this tough issue. We've probably all likely heard from our constituents, and it's important that we focus on privacy. I just have one question with regard to your bill. Is there a particular reason why you didn't default to having the record private and requesting that someone opt in to make it public rather than the other way around?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons is that we would have to have every single person in the state go back and re-register as voters under that opt. You have to be careful of the way you say it, to opt into making your record public. So if the assumption is that the record remains private, then that is an additional cost for the state to go and reach out to every single voter. As it is, as in the bill, with the assumption that the record is public unless you opt into making it private, the onus is on the individual either as they come in to register for the first time or on an existing registered voter to contact the county clerk's office and make that change.
Okay. So I would submit that most voters probably expect their record to be private anyway. And so, I appreciate that you're taking the time to tackle this issue, and I'm in full support of the bill. We should be a little stronger on that aspect, but thanks for doing that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Layton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to rise in support of this bill. It was one of the first things this session that I started hearing constituent complaints on, and I just think that as some of this information may be available out there in other places, but that being said, we, the government, should not be the source of that information and sharing people's private information. I think that we have a stewardship and an obligation to protect the privacy and the trust of the citizens of Utah, and I encourage you to support this bill.
Seeing no further lights, Representative Edwards for summation.
Thank you. I do appreciate the efforts made by the Senate sponsor on SB 36, and I do think that there has been a tremendous conversation that has ensued as part of that. My concern remains, though, about the existing loopholes there. I can see how it could complement this bill, but to think that we are getting to where we can achieve a level of confidence in our voters with Senate Bill 36 alone would be inaccurate. I think they need to go together, certainly to achieve the will of the people and what they're asking for. I appreciate Representative Perry's work on this and the work that has been done on this issue throughout the years. So I will just briefly reiterate to you that it's simple. This is something the people are asking for, that if you could remember the proper role of government and the right of privacy versus the right to vote, and after you finish voting yes on this bill, if you would like to check out the site utahvoters.com or come get the copy so you can know who to send out birthday cards to and exactly how old everyone is in the body, I've got copies for you here if you'd like to come pick those up. That concludes. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Edwards. Voting is open on first substitute House Bill 302. Representative D. Appears that all present have voted. Voting will be closed. First substitute House Bill 302. Having received 71 yes votes, 2 no votes, passes the House, will be transmitted to the Senate for its consideration. Representatives, we have an item on the time certain calendar. Madam Reading Clerk.
House Bill 346, Foster Children Amendments, Representative Johnny Anderson. This bill was heard in Health and Human Services with a vote of 702.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representatives, I have the pleasure of chairing the Legislative Child Welfare Oversight Panel, and although we're not supposed to mention folks' names here, I do want to point out that Representative Menlove and Representative Cosgrove serve on that with me, and it's tough duty. We often have to discuss some very weighty matters dealing with crimes against children and how to properly balance the rights of parents and families with the need to protect children that are in bad situations. So as you can imagine, the meetings are not typically a lot of fun. One of the bright spots we had this last year was when we heard from the Utah Youth Council. This is a great bunch of kids who are in foster care or who have been in foster care, who've had to deal with far too many challenges at such a young age. But they're kids who persevere, kids who are optimistic about their future, and it's heartwarming to visit with them. When they came to our meeting this year, they wanted to talk about things that we could do as a legislature to help them have a little more normal experience in their adolescence. Currently, if a foster youth wants to be able to go to a friend's house to study, participate in a school extracurricular activity, go to a party, go to the prom, etc., they have to, the foster parent has to get permission from the caseworker, who often has to go to a supervisor, who then has to check with the guardian ad litem, and sometimes has to get permission from a judge. As you can imagine, going through this ridiculously cumbersome process is difficult for all parties involved, and especially for the youth who are impacted by this. And often, they can't get permission in time to be able to participate in these activities. So what this bill will do is it will require the Division of Child and Family Services to make efforts to normalize the life in these children's lives, and to empower the caregivers, the foster parents, to be able to approve or disapprove a child's participation in these kind of activities based on the caregiver's own assessment using a reasonable and prudent parent standard without approval from the division. So essentially, we would empower these foster parents to make the kind of decisions that foster parents ought to be able to make for the foster kids that they care for. This would also require the division to verify that private agencies that are providing out-of-home placement would promote and protect the ability of a child to participate in these age-appropriate activities. In addition, it provides that a caregiver is not liable for harm caused to a child in an out-of-home placement if the child participates in an activity approved by the caregiver, assuming that caregiver uses that prudent parent standard to be able to approve or disapprove these activities. And with that, Madam Speaker, that ends my presentation.
Thank you, Representative. Is there discussion to House Bill 346? Seeing none, back to you for summation.
Representatives, I would appreciate your support on this bill. This is important legislation. This is something that these kids put together. They worked on it themselves, came up with, looked around the country and found examples of how we could implement such a program in Utah and came up with an excellent solution. So, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Voting is open on House Bill 346. It appears that all present have voted. Voting will be closed. House Bill 346, having received 73 yes votes, 0 no votes, passes the House and will be transmitted to the Senate for its consideration. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could I request a personal privilege?
Sure.
Representatives, we have with us today some of the kids from the Utah Youth Council and Jennifer Larson, who's Utah's Adolescent Services Program Administrator. I just was hoping maybe we could recognize them for the good work on this bill that they've done. Thank you.
Representative Perry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Point of personal privilege.
Personal privilege granted.
Thank you. My fellow representatives, today I have, I don't know if I have all 140 of them up there right now, but I think we have about 80 of the students from 3 Mile Creek Elementary. If they'd stand up. One of them looks extremely a lot like I did when I was a young man over here in this corner. I just want to tell them how grateful I am for this 5th grade class coming down. They've had me do some presentations at their school. It's always fun to have these young people here to learn about the process. I'll get a chance to go visit with them after lunch, so we're excited about having them here and hope they have a good day at the Capitol and would like to have the body recognize them.
Representative Layton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Having voted on the prevailing side, I make a motion that we reconsider our actions on HB 72, Higher Education Grievance Procedure Amendments.
Thank you. The motion is to reconsider our actions on House Bill 72. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I've just spoken with the sponsor, and he has alleviated my concerns and has an amendment that he will be moving, and I support the bill now.
Thank you. Is there further discussion to the motion to reconsider our action on House Bill 72? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
No.
Let's try that again. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
No.
Over the motion passes. We will reconsider our action on House Bill 72. Representatives, what that means is that it's placed at the top of the House third reading calendar and is up for immediate discussion. I'm going to have the reading clerk read that again.
House Bill 72, Higher Education Grievance Procedure Amendments. Representative Wheatley.
Representative Wheatley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move an amendment.
Representative, give me a second so I can get that amendment.
Okay.
Is that amendment number 1?
It's amendment number 2, dated February 25th at 10:24.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to move Amendment 2, and what this amendment does is on line 15 it adds the word certain, and in line 56 it adds the only time that this can be done to have sworn testimony is when a grievance hearing relates to an employee demotion or an employee termination, and that's all this amendment does.
Thank you, Representative. Is there discussion to the motion to amend? Representative D.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. I think this amendment addresses the exact issues that I outlined before the body yesterday, and with the support of the amendment, I would be happy to be in support of the bill.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion to the amendment. Representative Noel.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I also rise in support of the amendment and the bill, and I think this takes care of the problem that we talked about before. But when the grievance gets to a state where an employee is demoted or faces termination, that at that point in time it's a serious enough matter that they should be able to call people under oath. And so I support the sponsor and support the bill.
Seeing no further lights, Representative Wheatley for summation on your motion to amend.
I waive.
Summation is waived. The motion to amend is Amendment Number 2, dated February 25th at 10:24 a.m. All in favor of the motion to amend, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Where the motion passes, the bill is amended. Representative Wheatley to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Basically, all this bill does is require the State Board of Regents to enact regulations requiring sworn testimony during those certain employee grievances, as I mentioned in the amendment to, as it relates to an employee demotion or an employee termination. And that's what the bill is to require certain sworn testimony and have the Board of Regents enact certain regulation. And that would be my presentation.
To the bill, Representative Christensen.
Will the sponsor yield, please?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Representative, can I just ask a couple of clarifying questions, if I might?
Yes.
You're limiting this to the Regency situation, the higher ed? Is that what you're limiting it to?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you know what the employment setting is? Because we're an employment at will state where everyone's free to quit anytime, anyone's free to be terminated anytime. That's the general rule. The exception out there in the employment sector is that maybe you have a union negotiated contract, maybe you have a fixed written agreement, but if it was an employment at will situation, and I can appreciate if you're saying that they have a grievance because they are on the verge of losing their employment or they've already lost their employment and they're challenging the grounds for their termination. Is there something unique that you're aware of in that particular setting that makes it not the usual? Not the usual employment or termination at will?
Can you?
In other words, is there something about that particular employment setting that you're limiting it to? You're saying that it's only in higher education in Utah, so you're saying that a public employee in the higher education sector has lost their job or is on the verge of losing their job because of allegations, and they want to confront and try to prove their innocence, and therefore they want formal testimony, correct?
That's correct.
And do you know in that particular unique setting, two questions, is your bill limited just to that setting? And if it is, are the people in that setting under something other than the usual employment at will that all other people in the general public are exposed to?
To my understanding, this is only applicable to institutions of higher ed.
Do they have written guaranteed contracts of employment? Do they have
no written guarantees?
So are they employment at will also?
There are some at will positions. Usually they're administrators, like vice presidents.
I can appreciate that, and then I could see them, but it just seems like it's kind of an implied presumption that the only reason you'd even be in a situation where you'd have grounds to challenge a termination or to raise a grievance hearing would be if you had an underlying contract of employment. And that's what I'm trying to...
Well, not necessarily. The Board of Regents, they do have policies and procedures to allow employees to grieve various kinds of personnel issues.
Okay,
but
thank you.
This is only pertaining to the termination and demotion.
And that might be an administrative rule, so I was just trying to limit that or just understand the setting, because it seemed like there was an inherent conflict, and I needed to know that situation so I could appreciate the context. If I might just have one moment, Madam Speaker, to look at something here. So I think you've identified a context or a setting where this would arise, so thank you.
Seeing no further lights, Representative Wheatley for summation on the bill.
What I believe this bill does, it adds integrity and credibility to the process. And I've been in discussion with several experts in the field of employment law, and they are in agreement that this would add credibility and integrity to the process. And for that, I'd ask you to vote for House Bill 72.
Thank you, Representative Wheatley. Voting is open on House Bill 72. Representative Menlove. It appears that all present have voted. Voting will be closed. House Bill 72, having received 60 yes votes, 12 no votes, passes. The House will be transmitted to the Senate for its consideration. The Speaker announces a Rules Committee meeting. The Rules Committee will be meeting in the Majority Caucus Room.
Madam Reading Clerk.
House Bill 333, Payroll Services Amendments, Representative Spendlove. This bill was heard in Government Operations with a vote of 702.
Representative Spendlove.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. The heart of this bill is essentially found on line 34 of the bill. Essentially what it does, it exempts the School for the Deaf and Blind from central payroll processing. The change in this bill arose from changes the legislature made in 2012 to payroll processing at the Department of Human Resource Management, where the legislature consolidated payroll functions into one centralized processing system. Since then, we've identified a few limited instances where it's better to leave payroll processing at the agency level. This is another example of that change. The School for the Deaf and Blind is the only state agency that employs teachers outside of the Office of Education, and those teachers fall under a negotiated agreement that are therefore exempt from DHRM rule. So for the past couple of years, the School for the Deaf and Blind has been paying for payroll services that they don't use. They spend about $21,000 a year to process their payroll. So this change will essentially just increase government efficiency by eliminating the duplication of services. It will also free up about $21,000 that can go back to helping these students. We've worked with the Department of Human Resource Management. They support the bill, and also the Office of Education recognizes the necessity of making the change.
So with that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Representative Spendlove. Seeing no questions, I come back to you for summation.
I just ask for your support.
Thank you. Voting is now open on House Bill 333.
You can vote by the red or green button on the bottom of the screen. Yes. Wilcox is on the phone. Gibson. Wilcox is on the phone.
Yes. You what? Well, thank you. You're kind. Seeing all present have voted, the voting will now be closed. Oh, that's right.
So you'd say House Bill 333 having received 72 yea votes and 0 no votes.
House Bill 72, or 333, excuse me, having received 72 yea votes and 0 nay votes, passes the House and will be moved to transmitted to the Senate for its consideration. Madam Reading Clerk.
House Bill 31, Pollution Control Amendments, Representative Wilcox. This was heard in Revenue and Taxation with a vote of 1402.
Representative Wilcox. Where'd you go? I've lost you. Okay, Representative Wilcox, you have to be able to read to do this, so bear with me.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Might I say it's an honor to present this bill with you on the dais. Just very quickly, this is a committee bill that we studied throughout the interim in Revenue and Taxation interim, and primarily adds pollution control devices to the list of business inputs that are exempt from sales tax. Follows with our current tax policy of allowing exemptions for business inputs so that things aren't taxed twice, and also stimulate the economy. And this one has the added bonus of helping us to clear the air, so to speak, as we encourage our partners in the private sector to participate in that activity. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Representative Wilcox. Seeing no questions, we return back to you for summation.
I'll waive. Thank you.
So, voting is now open on House Bill 31. Representative Hutchings, would you like to vote? Seeing all present have voted, the voting will be closed. House Bill 31, having received 71 yea votes and 1 nay vote, will be transmitted to the Senate for its approval. Madam Reading Clerk.
House Bill 74, Energy Efficient Vehicle Tax Credits, Representative Snow. This bill was heard in Revenue and Taxation with a vote of 1303.
Representative Snow.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Likewise, it's an honor to have my friend and colleague on the dais. This bill could more appropriately be titled Clean Energy Efficient Vehicle Tax Credit. Mr. Speaker Pro Tem and members of the body, let me remind you a little bit of the history of the existing law with respect to the credit. Last session, under the sponsorship and the good help of a representative from Cache County, this body extended the tax credit for a CNG vehicle, both a CNG new vehicle and a new conversion, up to $2,500. At that time, under that bill, the existing credit for an all-electric vehicle, like as in a Nissan Leaf, was only $605, likewise for a hybrid. I brought this bill essentially in an effort to equalize the electric technology, especially for an all-electric vehicle, to be equal to that was already being provided for a CNG vehicle. So that's the first thing that this bill does, is equalize equal to a CNG vehicle the same credit that should be attributable to an all-electric vehicle. The second thing that it does is add another classification of a vehicle that would be entitled to a credit, a plug-in electric vehicle, similar to or the same as a Chevrolet Volt, and making that credit $1,250. This bill has a 1-year sunset on it. And some have asked why I'm only doing this for 1 year. And my response has been because this is an area that the technology is changing so quickly that I don't think the legislature or we want to be bound for a long period of time to technology when newer and better technologies may provide a reason to shift those incentives elsewhere. I believe that we face in Utah almost a crisis level at times with the inversion. Statistics tell us that about 50% of what we see outside during the inversion with respect to particulate contamination, somewhere between 50 and 57% of what you see is attributable directly to vehicle use. The purpose of incentive under our tax code, and in this case, is to go directly to the issue of vehicles in terms of changing people's thinking about a better technology and a newer technology to help address that issue. And that was the reason, and that's the basis for presenting this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. That concludes my initial presentation.
Thank you, Representative Snow. Representative Draxler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I rise in strong support of this bill. I want to thank the good representative from Washington County for recognizing its need. When you have a vehicle that essentially at the tailpipe has zero emissions, we need to do what we can as a state to encourage these vehicles. They do cost more for the consumer. And if we can help incentivize their interest in in acquiring these vehicles with a relatively modest tax credit. I think we owe it to our people in the interest of clean air to do so. I think it's important that we do an all-of-the-above approach to air quality. We need to take any and all measures we can that make sense to improve our air quality. This provision has improved air quality over the years because it has encouraged the conversion to compressed natural gas, hybrid, and electric vehicles. It has actually helped improve our air quality. We know that. And so this is something substantive, something real that we can hang our hat on and support. And I urge this body to pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Lifferth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I'd like to rise and discuss this bill just briefly. I need to declare a conflict. I actually do drive a Chevrolet Volt. I love it. It's an amazing vehicle. But I will not be able to participate in the tax incentive that's advised here. I'm leasing the car, so I'm not even getting the federal incentive. I think the vehicle needs to stand on its own and be recognized for the contribution that it's making to clean air and to reducing dependency on foreign oil. I bought my vehicle, or I leased my vehicle, without any of these incentives, and I think it should be that way. I don't think that the taxpayer should be subsidizing other people like me that choose to do this. I recognize the argument here. I recognize the objective here to promote get people to purchase vehicles and lease vehicles like this. But in principle, I'm opposed to the tax incentive here where the government is helping pick winners and losers. I think that good ideas and good products should stand on their own. You know, there was no tax incentive given to people to buy iPhones when they first came out, and yet people bought them based on the value that they provided to the individual. And I think that these new plug-in hybrids such as mine, which is an amazing vehicle, they should stand on their own, and people should be able to buy them based on the financial decisions of that vehicle alone, and not receiving federal governments and excuse me, the state government's incentives to change their purchasing habits. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Have you seen my good friend from Eagle Mountain's new Volt vehicle? I walked over and looked at it this morning in the parking garage, and I have to tell you, I was impressed. And I stand in strong support of this bill, and I want to say we've got a lot of clean air bills, and I'm not going to stand in support of every one of them, and every one of them have to be judged on their own merits, obviously. But I want to say this. We've gotten a lot of information from our constituents this session about the importance of clean air, rightly so. And people don't realize that the air has never been cleaner in the last 50 years in the Salt Lake Valley than now. And yet, even with the air quality improved as it has over time, there is still substantial public health risk to the fact that we have such dirty air on occasional days when inversions are in place. And I want to say how much I appreciate the support of the body generally that we've seen thus far in the session for the clean air bills that have come forth, and I hope that we continue to see significant movement forward in doing what we can to clean up the air along the Wasatch Front in Utah. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative King. Representative Handy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I certainly support my colleague's bill here and appreciate the hard work that he and others have done. That we live in an exciting time, the technology that's available to us for many things. And it is interesting. I simply wanted to point out about these tax incentives. I didn't know until last night that electric vehicles already get like a $7,500 federal tax incentive. And so now I think it's great and wonderful that we do stimulate the purchase of these vehicles to jumpstart this. But I would hope that going forward, and I think all of us hope this, that we can enable these products and to stand on their own as we go forward. I do support the bill, and I'm glad that we're doing this, and just wanted to bring that information to the body. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Handy. Representative Jerry Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I have a conflict on this idea. We seem to be very vigorous on cleaning up the air here in this area, which is appropriate. but we're passing the pollution burden down to Carbon County and Emery County and burdening the coal industry and putting them out of business while we're still wanting to promote more electrical vehicles. Now, if I had a greenhouse and I thought that was really cool, I would not feel good about having everybody get a tax credit to paint their houses green. That makes no sense. And I don't see why we are in the business of promoting tax credits for people to buy good things. I can't support that.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. Representative Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. First, in reference to the last comment, I'm not sure how this hurts the coal industry if we have to use coal to produce more electricity. But I know that many people charge their electric vehicles with solar panels that they have on their house, and I think that's a great idea. Now, we've also had conversations today about incentives and winners and losers. We provide incentives through our state tax system all the time. We're always picking winners and losers. And why should we pick a winner? Why should we provide an incentive? Because it helps the public. So we need to ask ourselves, how does this bill help the public? If more people are driving vehicles that don't pollute, we will have less air pollution. We know that 57% of our pollutants, our air pollutants, are coming from tailpipes. This is one way to help clean that up. By having cleaner air, we know that we have fewer costs for health care. We know from our studies through the Economic Development Task Force that poor air quality affects our economy. Businesses that don't come here, employees that leave, tourists that don't come. So yes, we do have reasons to pick winners and losers. And I suggest that you vote for this bill. It's a winner.
Thank you, Representative Aaron. Representative Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. We've heard discussion with respect to this bill that this is just one of many clean air bills that'll come before us. Some already have, and others are yet to come. And it would be nice to be in a position to do an all-of-the-above approach, but I don't think we can. I don't think we can afford to do that. And so we need to prioritize. We need to look at what bills give us the biggest bang for the buck. I'm disappointed that along with this bill, we didn't receive some data that shows how much of a decrease in emissions we would experience if we expended the full $3 million indicated on the fiscal note for incentives to replace current vehicles, and I'm going to assume those are Tier 2 vehicles, with the vehicles that qualify for the incentive under this bill. I would like to see those numbers and see what type of impact that would have. My suspicion is, while it would make a measurable difference, it would be insignificant. I think where we would be much better served in spending this money or providing these tax incentives to replace wood-burning heating devices that are the sole source of heat in homes along the Wasatch Front. The difference between a vehicle that qualifies for this subsidy and a Tier 2 vehicle is quite small, whereas the difference between a wood-burning furnace and a new efficient gas furnace is about 100 to 1. And I think it would make much more sense to focus on those sources of emissions. The other reason that I think that's a better course to pursue is that typically those who have wood-burning heat as the sole source of their home are lower-income people, whereas people that can afford to buy new cars are often not lower-income people. And so for those reasons, I don't anticipate supporting this bill. I would rather focus our efforts on some more effective measures. I'm afraid that this is more of a feel-good bill than an actual productive bill. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Green. Representative Redd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
this is a good discussion, and a lot of what everybody said on the floor people have some really good points. The good representative from, what county are you from? Utah County. Brought up some good points about relative benefits of this bill and relative costs, and whether this bill is more expensive or less expensive than wood burning bills. Certainly, if you do the math on this bill, it more likely is more expensive than the benefit we get from converting wood burning stoves to furnaces. I'm going to support this bill because it has a 1-year sunset clause. Because as we go forward, the actual benefit of electric vehicles compared with Tier 3 vehicles does get relatively small. We don't have Tier 3 vehicles yet, but within the next 3 years we probably will have. The infrastructure needed to support electric vehicles is coming along. The benefits to air quality as we go forward are significant compared with Tier 0 vehicles and Tier 1 vehicles, and to a lesser extent Tier 2 vehicles. So because of the sunset clause, I'm going to go ahead and support this bill. But I think it's important to know as we go forward, there are a lot of technologies that are coming out that will change what we do here in this legislature and how we focus on these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Redd. Seeing no further lights, we go back to Representative Snow for summation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Pro Tem. And thank you, members of this body, for engaging in the discussion. I do hear what has been said with respect to your concerns. Let me just say this. If we're going to do something about the air here in a short period of time, it's going to be related to technology and innovation. And as we increase competition, it will increase innovation and it will drop the price. The purpose of this bill is to try, in a short period of time, to light a fire. It's not to necessarily make winners and losers, but the people have spoken, and this bill addresses at least the vehicle issue, in part, as an incentive when those people living in Utah, but particularly along the Wasatch Front, purchase a vehicle, they will think twice about the incentive. Hopefully investing in an incentive that will not only take care of their transportation needs, but also help clean the air. I find it interesting, on February 8th, the Deseret News ran a poll that was conducted, the results of a poll that was conducted where they asked all Utahns across the state what were the most important issues facing the state. And they had 20 to pick from. Number one, no surprise, was education. Number two was air quality. The people in this state want something done. There is another issue, too, that is related to this bill, and that is the economic interest or the economic development interest of the state. When Jeff Edwards, who is president and CEO of Economic Development Corporation of Utah, came to the committee and testified or gave his presentation, he said what has been said previously in this body: when I recruit businesses, high-tech businesses, like Adobe and others, to Utah, and it's during the inversion, the first thing that happens is they're very surprised at the air quality. The second thing they want to know is how long this lasts, what's the effect on their health. But the next thing they want to know is what is the state of Utah doing about it? And I think this is not entirely the answer, but it's one piece of the answer. And I agree with the good representative that spoke from Cache Valley about the fact that the purpose of this 1-year sunset is to provide some incentive to get this process going and to get people on board as soon as possible so that we can address this issue. I ask for your support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Representative Snow. Voting is now open on House Bill 74. she normally do. Thank you. Representative Grover. Seeing all present have voted, the voting will now be closed. House Bill 74, having received 59 yea votes, 13 nay votes, passes this body and will be transmitted to the Senate for its consideration. Representative Jeremy Peterson. Oh, you want your mic on?
That's the wrong Peterson.
I'll get the right one.
Can you hear me now? Good.
I can hear me now.
We're not going to do introduction of bills or committee reports or any of that.
Well, I don't know. I wanted to see what you had. Didn't you want a personal privilege or something? You said you did.
No.
Oh, I was reading your mind backwards.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm not used to seeing the...
Okay. You're excused, but I'm not. Where's
Sandy will give them to you.
Okay.
Madam Reading Clerk for standing committee reports.
February 24th, 2014. Madam Speaker, the Business and Labor Committee recommends House Bill 141, Health Reform Amendments by Representative Dunnigan, be replaced and reports a favorable recommendation on first substitute House Bill 141, Health Reform Amendments with amendments. Has returned House Bill 142, Securities Act Amendments by Representative Gibson to the Rules Committee, and recommends second substitute Senate Bill 147, Residential Renters Deposits Amendments by Senator Jones be replaced, and reports a favorable recommendation on third substitute Senate Bill 147, Residential Rental Amendments, and asks that it be placed on the consent calendar. Respectfully, James Dunnigan, Committee Chair.
Representative Pitcher.
I would move that we adopt the committee report.
Thank you. The motion is to adopt the committee report. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Rule the motion passes. The committee report is adopted. First substitute, House Bill 141 has been read for the second time and it will be placed on the House third reading calendar. House Bill 142 will be returned to the Rules Committee. The reading of the committee report constitutes the first reading of third substitute Senate Bill 147, Residential Rental Amendments. Madam Reading Clerk for a second reading.
Third substitute Senate Bill 147, Residential Rental Amendments.
Thank you. Third substitute Senate Bill 147 has been read for the second time and will be placed on the Senate third reading calendar. Madam Reading Clerk.
February 24th, 2014. Madam Speaker, the Education Committee reports a favorable recommendation on House Bill 223, School Board Elections Provisions by Representative Nielsen, House Bill 236, State School Board Nomination Revisions by Representative Powell with amendments, and a favorable recommendation on first substitute Senate Bill 40, Financial and Economic Literacy Amendments by Senator Jones, and due to fiscal impact recommends it be referred to the Rules Committee for prioritization. Respectfully, Frances Gibson, Committee Chair.
Representative Snow. Representative Snow, can I get a motion on the committee report?
Motion to adopt committee report.
Thank you. Motion is to adopt the committee report. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Rule the motion passes. The committee report is adopted. House Bill 223 and House Bill 236 have been read for the second time and will be placed on the House third reading calendar. First substitute Senate Bill 40 has been read for the second time and will be returned to rules due to fiscal impact. Madam Reading Clerk.
February 24th, 2014. Madam Speaker, the Health and Human Services Committee reports a favorable recommendation on House Bill 143, Psychiatric Nurse Amendments by Representative Redd. Recommends House Bill 324, Orthobionomy Exemption Amendments by Representative Wilson be replaced, and favorably recommends first substitute House Bill 324, Orthobionomy Exemption Amendments. A favorable recommendation on House Bill 357, Budgetary Amendments by Representative Menlove. House Bill 361, Certificate of Stillbirth Amendments by Representative Nielsen with amendments. House Bill 367, Physical Therapy Scope of Practice Amendments by Representative Hughes. House Bill 363, Mental Health Professional Practice Act Amendments by Representative Kennedy and recommends it be placed on the consent calendar. And Senate Bill 125, Retired Volunteer Healthcare Practitioner Amendments by Senator Henderson and recommends it be placed on the consent calendar. Respectfully, Paul Ray, Committee Chair.
Representative Ray.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move adoption of the committee report.
Thank you. Motion is to adopt the committee report. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Well, the motion passes. The committee report is adopted. House Bill 143, first substitute House Bill 324, House Bill 357, House Bill 361, and House Bill 367 have been read for the second time and will be placed on the House third reading calendar. House Bill 363 and Senate Bill 125 have been read for the second time and will be placed on the consent calendar. Madam Reading Clerk.
February 24th, 2014. Madam Speaker, the Public Utilities and Technology Committee reports a favorable recommendation on House Bill 136, Assisted Living Facility Surveillance Act by Representative Barras. Respectfully, Roger Barras, Committee Chair.
Representative Barras.
I move to adopt the committee report.
Thank you. Motion to adopt the committee report. Is there discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Well, the motion passes. The committee report is adopted. House Bill 136 has been read for the second time and will be placed on the third reading calendar. Madam Reading Clerk.
February 25th, 2014. Madam Speaker, the Judiciary Committee recommends House Bill 118, Personal Injury Damages Amendments by Representative McKiff be replaced and favorably recommends first substitute House Bill 118, Personal Injury Damages Amendments. A favorable recommendation on House Bill 147, Peace Officer Agreements with Federal Agencies by Representative Greenwood. Recommends House Bill 251, Unsworn Declaration Amendments by Representative McKiff be replaced and reports a favorable recommendation on first substitute House Bill 251, Unsworn Declaration Amendments with amendments. Recommends House Bill 265, Probate Code Amendments by Representative Snow be replaced and a favorable recommendation on first substitute House Bill 265, Probate Code Amendments with amendments. Respectfully, Kay McKiff, Committee Chair.
Representative McKiff. Committee report.
I move adoption of the committee report.
Thank you. Motion is to adopt the committee report. Is there discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Well, the motion passes. The committee report is adopted. First substitute House Bill 118, House Bill 147, first substitute House Bill 251, and first substitute House Bill 265 have been read for the second time and will be placed on the third reading calendar. Madam Reading Clerk.
February 25th, 2014. Madam Speaker, the Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Committee has returned House Bill 305, Safety Belt Law Revisions by Representative Perry to the Rules Committee for interim study. Respectfully, Curtis Oda, Committee Chair.
Representative Oda.
Move to adopt the committee report.
Thank you. Motion is to adopt the committee report. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Rule the motion passes. The committee report is adopted. House Bill 305 will be returned to rules for interim study. Madam Reading Clerk.
February 25th, 2014. Madam Speaker, the Natural Resources, Agriculture and Environment Committee reports a favorable recommendation on H.R. 5, House Resolution on Clean Burning Renewable Fuels by Representative Johnny Anderson. Respectfully, Michael Noel, Committee Chair.
Representative Noel.
I would move to adopt the committee report.
Thank you. Motion is to adopt the committee report. Is there discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Well, the motion passes. H.R. 5 has been read for the second time and will be placed on the third reading calendar. Madam Reading Clerk for a Rules Committee report.
February 25th, 2014. Madam Speaker, the Rules Committee recommends the following bills and resolutions be assigned to standing committees. House Bill 393, House Bill 376, House Bill 369, House Bill 392, House Bill 155, House Bill 373, House Bill 149, House Bill 151, House Bill 154, House Bill 158, House Bill 386, HJR 21, House Bill 374, House Bill 382, House Bill 364, House Bill 379, House Bill 381, and House Bill 388. Respectfully, Dean Sompe, Chair.
Representative Sompe.
Motion to adopt the committee report.
Thank you. Motion is to adopt the committee report. Is there discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Well, the motion passes. The committee report is adopted. The Speaker assigns the following bills to the following committees: to Business and Labor, House Bill 393 and House Bill 376; to Government Operations, House Bill 369 and House Bill 392; To law enforcement and criminal justice, House Bill 155 and House Bill 373. To natural resources, agriculture, and environment, House Bill 149, House Bill 151, House Bill 154, House Bill 158, House Bill 386, and HJR 21. To public utilities and technology, House Bill 374. To political subdivisions, House Bill 382. To revenue and taxation, House Bill 364, House Bill 379, House Bill 381. To transportation, House Bill 388. Madam Reading Clerk, for communications from the Senate.
February 25th, 2014, Madam Speaker, the Senate passed second substitute House Bill 261, Domestic Horse Disposal, by Representative Andrew Egg, and House Bill 290, Criminal Code General Provisions, by Representative Moss. These bills have been signed by the President and are transmitted for the signature of the Speaker. Respectfully, Leslie McLean, Secretary of the Senate.
Thank you, Madam Reading Clerk. Second substitute House Bill 261 and House Bill 290 have been signed by the Speaker and will be referred to staff for enrolling. Madam Reading Clerk.
February 25th, 2014, Madam Speaker, the Senate concurred in the House amendments and passed Senate Bill 123, Interlocal Cooperation Act revisions, by Senator Valentine, and it's transmitted for the signature of the Speaker. Respectfully, Leslie McLean, Secretary of the Senate.
Thank you, Madam Reading Clerk. Senate Bill 123 has been signed by the Speaker and will be returned to the Senate for the signature of the President. Madam Reading Clerk.
February 25th, 2014, Madam Speaker, the Senate passed as amended Senate Bill 178, Controlled Substance Database Modifications, by Senator Vickers. First substitute Senate Bill 44, Workers' Compensation and Employee Misconduct, by Senator Maine. Senate Bill 96, Veterans Assistance Registry, by Senator Maine. And STR 16, Joint Rules Resolution, Legislative Compensation and Expense Revisions, by Senator Hilliard. These bills are transmitted for consideration. Respectfully, Leslie McLean, Secretary of the Senate.
Thank you, Madam Reading Clerk. These bills have been read for the first time and are referred to the Rules Committee. Madam Reading Clerk, for introduction of bills.
House Bill 400, Non-Repairable Vehicle Amendments, Representative McKell. House Bill 401, Access Utah Program, Representative Dunnigan. And HCR 12, Concurrent Resolution recognizing the 30th anniversary of the Sundance Institute, Representative Seelig.
Thank you, Madam Reading Clerk. These bills have been read for the first time and will be referred to the Rules Committee. Representative Jeremy Peterson for the Third House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I was so abruptly cut off, I was going to ask the good representative from St. George. I am not used to seeing white hair at the dais, and I was going to ask him if that was a powdered wig. Thing. All right. For lunch today, we have caucus, and there's a break in the kitchen from 2 to 4 from the Utah Cultural Alliance. And in the rotunda, there is a Utah Technology Council meeting from 3:45 to 5:45. Now, representatives, yesterday we were witness to a very interesting and I would say somewhat entertaining exchange between a member of our body and a member of our Utah delegation. So if I could ask Representative Ken Ivory to please stand up. Representative Ken Ivory gets the Mending Fences Award. Having discussed things with him, it appears things are now better with our Utah delegation, and we present to him this bottle of Tabasco sauce to replace the bottle that he had to use to cover all the crow that he ate yesterday to make things better. So thank you, Ken Ivory, Mending Fences Award. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Seelig for the Minority Party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I look forward to seeing you all at 12:30 sharp.
Representative D.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Majority Caucus, as mentioned, will be caucusing today at 12:30. Representatives, it's imperative that we ask you to be in this particular caucus meeting. We have some subject matter, I think, that is relevant to the day, and we really need your help on this particular matter. With that, I'll move that the House recess until this afternoon at 2 p.m.
Thank you. The motion is to recess until this afternoon at 2 p.m. All in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Where the motion passes, we are in recess.